What's up, everybody? It's your boy Season. So today we've got another Brave review. We're going to be taking a look at the GATTAI Brave Fighter of Sun Granbird. So this is the other half of Great Fighbird. So we're going to be taking a look at this today. Let's not waste any more time. Let's go. So let's see what we have inside here. So of course, first we have the manual. This one's quite thick. I'm not surprised considering this is going to be a manual for Granbird and Great Fighbird, I'm pretty sure. So we've got that. And then here we've got Granbird here. So he's pretty big. You've got the faceplate for Great Fighbird here with his helmet for Granbird as well. And then you've got, it looks like you got another one for the Android there. All right. So, and then it looks like you've got all of his accessories there. So you've got his guns, and then you've got his breastplate here, and looks like you've got a plethora of hands here and here. So you've got that. Looks like you have the stem for the sword, for the Great Fighbird sword there as well. So you've got that. So pretty simple release. Everything looks good thus far. So now what we'll do is we'll take a look at the manual next. So let's take a look at this manual for Granbird. Now, oh yeah, this thing. So pretty much I put this in Google Translate, and pretty much what it's saying is that there was an error on page 19. So it looks like this is the mistake here, to where you have it where you're rotating it counterclockwise, and it looks like you're supposed to rotate it clockwise instead. So it looks like they made that correction there. So that's what that was about. So let's take a look at this manual. Now, the thing about Granbird, as you guys know, I love Fighbird, especially the original version of Fighbird. Granbird, not so much. I would say that this is probably one of my least favorite designs, just because it's not as awesome as the first one. And it's just interesting to me. I'm not seeing anything here that's gonna look, it looks like it's gonna be crazy. Now, the thing about Granbird to me is that, generally speaking, especially when it comes to him in figure or like a robot toy mode, he tends to be very bulky, just because of the fact that he's a parts former, just like God Bomber was to Super Genrai. So he's maybe not as bad, but he still splits apart quite a bit. So it'll be interesting to see what we do once we get to Great Fighbird. But I'm not really seeing anything out of the ordinary here. So everything looks pretty basic. Now this is a little bit thicker, just because I'm sure that this has the transformation. This has the transformation. Ah, there it is right there. The transformation for Great Fighbird. And Great Fighbird, I just don't like him as much as the regular Fighbird. I think that regular Fighbird with the whole flame motif, I just like it a lot better. But that doesn't mean that these designs are bad by any means. Now, there is artwork that has Granbird in a pretty good, he looks pretty good. He's a little bit slimmer, because even in the show, he's not very thick. He's actually quite slim. He's not as slim as like the original Fighbird, but he is a space shuttle and everything. So it's a little bit bigger or bulkier than a normal jet that the original one was based off of. So it'll be interesting to see what we do once we get him in hand, and we'll start doing this. But yeah, it looks like you've got the formations here for Great Fighbird here in the back. So we'll be doing that in another video, but this one's just going to concentrate on Fighbird. So that's what we've got for the manual for Granbird. So now we'll take a look at Granbird himself. So let's take a look at this Granbird here. So first impressions, he's very, very thick. Now, as we've seen with a lot of other figures, especially when you're talking about two figures that combine, the second unit always tends to be kind of like the parts former. So in essence, it breaks apart and then attaches onto usually the main unit. And with Granbird, this is no different. Now, I will say, as far as his detail is concerned, he doesn't really have that much panel lining anywhere. He's got some on the legs here. He's got some here where the shuttle parts are here, but that's pretty much it. So there's not much as far as panel lining goes. The plastic quality feels okay. It feels a lot like Fighbird did, which is pretty good for Goodsmile, but it's interesting, especially now that I've done the God Genrai review and kind of saw that one. This one has a totally different feel than that one does. And this one literally splits apart from from the middle. So that's going to be interesting when we get to the articulation section. It does look good for what it is. I would like it to be slightly thinner. I don't know, he just seems very, very bulky, especially compared to Fighbird, which is quite interesting. And I may bring out Fighbird so we can take a look at him later on. But I think overall, he still looks good here. And then let's take a look at the head here. So he does have some very long ears, you know, but I would say that the overall sculpt looks good, even though I'm not a fan of the ears as much, but that will come into play when we mess around with Great Fighbird. So he does look solid. I will say that Goodsmile is getting better from a design perspective as far as what they're doing here with their Brave line. But for me, I've never really been that big of a fan of Granbird to begin with, but I think overall for what he is, I think that he is solid. So I just would have liked him to have been slightly slimmer. And especially in the midsection here, this is just very, very bulky. But of course, once we get into the transformation, we'll kind of go through that. So now what we'll do is we'll take a look at his accessories. So we'll do that next. So now we're going to take a look at Granbird's accessories. He doesn't have a ton of accessories, but we are going to take a look at them real quick. So first up, we have the Grand Cannon. So pretty much these would come out of his sides on his legs, and they would form the Grand Cannon. So in essence, you would just kind of slide those in together just like that. And so you have the Grand Cannon. You can use these separately or use these together. All right, so it does lack some of the detail from the show, like one of these was like white and things of that nature, but I think overall it still does the job. So you can use those together or separately if you like. So that's what you have for the Grand Cannon. And then you have the breaster jet. So just like the flame breaster on Fighbird, this is kind of like his breastplate that goes over his main body to form him into Jet Granbird. You do have that, and then you've got the missiles here as well. So you've got that, so that's pretty nice. This also becomes like a shield when he combines with Fighbird to become Great Fighbird. So that's what you have for the breaster jet. And then you have the helmet for Granbird once he's in kind of like his jet version of Granbird. So it pretty much attaches just like Fighbird's did with the flame breaster. So, but this sculpt looks really, really nice. I will admit that. So it does look really good. And then also you do get the head for Great Fighbird. And of course, we'll go through that in the Great Fighbird video, but you do get both of those. And then you do get another version of the android or Katori. So he pretty much combines just like he did with Fighbird, except for this time he goes onto the right breastplate of Granbird. So you do have him, but you do get another minifigure of him. I kind of do wish that they gave us the human form of him as well. I think that that would be a pretty cool gimmick to have. But I know the SMP one had a decent one for the android, a decent size. So, but that's what you have for the android. And then you do get a plethora of hands. You get about 7 different sets. Now these can be used for Granbird and Great Fighbird, but mainly I think that these are probably going to be for Great Fighbird. So of course you have the 2 closed fist here, semi-open ones here. You have the trigger finger hands there, and you've got another version of the trigger finger hands there. You also get a second set as well. All right, and that is for the flame sword. And these are probably for Great Fighbird there. So you get 3 sets of hands for him, but 7 in total. And these are pretty much for Granbird. These are for Great Fighbird. I do like the fact that they have them on these little stems. So, you know, you can kind of make them compact. They are more of a matte finish, I will say, and they're not very flexible. So unlike, you know, like the metal build Gundam ones where they're a little flexible, these tend to be semi-hard. So I don't know, they're okay. I don't dislike them, but that's what you have for the hands. And then lastly, you get the parts to assemble the flame sword for Great Fighbird. So it's actually pretty simple. And as you can see, this is kind of like the breastplate for Fighbird. And then this is a miniature version of this, but you would actually just take these and then connect those there. Let's get those connected there. And then you would take this part here and you would put this in here like that. And then that would be your sword for Great Fighbird. So looks pretty good. I do wish that they did come out with a special edition for these that were more of a chrome plated at the gold parts. I think that that would be pretty cool, but that's what you have for his flame sword. So that's what we have for accessories. As you saw, he doesn't really have a ton of accessories, but he does have enough here that we can kind of mess with him. So what we're gonna do next is we are going to get into articulation. So we'll do that next. So let's take a look at Granbird's articulation. So for the head, he can look up, way up like that. So he's kind of got this bottom piece here, and then he's got like a hinge that's able to face that up. So you do have that. You can also have it stick out as well. So that's interesting. Let's see if we can get that folded back down. So in essence, you just kind of put that back down. So you've got like that. He does spin 360. All right. He does have some downward movement, but not a ton. Of course, if you want to, you can kind of have the neck stick up a little bit further, and then you can have him look down like that. So I think that that's a pretty interesting compromise as far as how they did that. Also, you do have the ears. The ears do move. Okay, so they do move front and back that way. All right, then you can have those slicked back there. I do like the face sculpt here for Granbird, but that's what you have for the head. For the arms, you can move it shoulder length. Okay, this flap does not come open. All right, but you do have that. Can you rotate this 360? You probably have to get the wings in the back out of the way, but you can rotate that 360 for the shoulder. And then for the elbow, he can raise this all the way up. So he does have a really good bend on the elbow. So that is on a double joint here and here. So that's what you have for the elbow. And then for the forearm, there is no movement on the forearm. There's pretty much just a bicep moving up here. So let's go ahead and move on to the hands. So for the hands, you do have a thumb just like that. And then you do have this connection piece here. It does look like there's no 3-1 trigger split or anything like that. They're all connected together. And then you do have the thumb. So I kind of wish that there was a little bit more articulation on the hands. I've never really been impressed with the Goodsmile hands, but that's what you have for the hands. For the chest, there is no spin. So there's no movement on the chest, no side to side, no front and back, nothing. So you don't get that. These plates will move in the front. That's actually how for his transformation for the Fire Shuttle. And then this is where the Android goes in here. So you do have that, but unfortunately, no articulation in the chest area at all. For the waist section, he does have two front skirts that will move independently of each other. This is also, you see this line here, this is where he breaks apart as well, and that goes all the way up through the middle here. And then for the sides, you do have side skirts here, so those will move up and down, okay? The back skirt doesn't really move. You've got this part here. This is actually the front part of Great Fighbird in the back here, but his actual back skirt, you really can't move at all, and it's one solid piece. So that's what you have for the back skirts. And then let's take a look at his back real quick. Now for his wings, it is on this hinge right in here. So you can sweep these back. In the show, he had these swept back. So they were more like this versus them being flat out. But you can swing those in all the way like that. So you do have those for the wings, just in case I didn't mention that earlier. For the legs, let's take a look at the upper thigh. So for the upper thigh, you do have some movement here. This is the only way that you'll kind of get any kind of articulation for him going down or up is from the actual legs. We did see that with the Fighbird, and so this one looks like it's no different. It's limited by his bulkiness, I think. And so, but you do get a little bit there for his leg raise. Let's raise that up. So he's got about 90 degrees on the leg raise. You really can't get any higher than that. For the knee bend, you get about that there. We've definitely seen better than that, but that's all you're gonna get. Also, you see how boxy this is here, so you're not really gonna get any other articulation out of there. And then can he do the splits? Let's find out. I would say for the most part, yes, he can. So that pretty much has to do with his transformation. So you do have that for the splits. And then for the feet, of course, that will go about 3 notches down. So you do have that. It will go up some, but that wants to split. That's actually where he can get some articulation. But as you see, he doesn't really even have a back heel. It's kind of hidden in there with all this bulk, but it only goes one way. So it doesn't go the other way. So you do have that for the feet. So that's what we have for articulation. Overall, I would say that I'm kind of disappointed in his articulation, but considering that he is a parts former, I'm not that surprised. Now, one thing I did forget to go over is that he does have almost like this dual side skirt that probably has to do with his transformation into Great Fighbird. So you do have that on both sides. So I don't think I mentioned that in the articulation section, but I would say overall, I'm not as impressed with his articulation. We already know about the ab problems that they have. There is no ab articulation there. The hands, you know, the fact that they're all stuck together like that, I don't really like. I would have liked at least a 1-3 split or something on those. The knees, you're not gonna get very much articulation out of there outside the fact that he can do the splits and the wings. There's really not that much articulation here. And then for the shoulders, even if we could get the shoulders to where, I don't know, where it's on a hinge here, or this would open up. We've seen that in quite a bit of figures to kind of get more range of motion in his shoulders and arms. It doesn't look like you have that here for this Granbird. So that's what we have for articulation. Now, before we put the breaster jet on him and go through Granbird's transformation and all that, I want to show you a contrast. I want to show you a contrast between Granbird and Fighbird. All right, so let's bring out Fighbird in his base form. So this is without the flame breaster. And if you look at this, just look at the contrast there. And I do understand that Granbird is supposed to be bigger than Fighbird, and he's more powerful in the show. Like his punches are supposed to be like 50% more powerful than Fighbird and all of that. But to me, if you look at this, look how sleek this Fighbird looks compared to Granbird. Now, I do understand that it is a shuttle. You also have to do his transformation. And so therefore, probably some of the bulkiness you could not go without. And it's just the way that Granbird works. But to me, Fighbird just looks so much more sleeker. Now, I will admit that I am a little biased in this because Fighbird is one of my favorite designs in all of Brave, especially with the flame breaster. I've never been a fan of Granbird's design, but just look at the contrast as far as the sleekness. Look how the midsection, how it kind of goes in on itself. And even though this one does as well, it's way, way thicker than with Granbird. So even though Granbird is taller than him, and rightfully so, he's supposed to be a bigger unit, more of kind of like the powerhouse between the two. But I just think that the Fighbird one, it just looks way better to me personally. And not even just from a personal standpoint, as far as the design standpoint, just as far as the bulkiness and all of that. Look how bulky Granbird is compared to Fighbird. I think they got it right with Fighbird. And the thing is, I've seen artwork of Granbird, and he can look sleek. He can look really good. In the show, he didn't look very bulky. But I don't know, just in this kind of like 3D form of him, I'm not as impressed. But I did want you to kind of see the comparison between them in their base form, especially before we start putting more stuff on Granbird. So that's what you have for the comparison between Fighbird and Granbird. I just think that Fighbird overall so far is a better figure as far as his articulation and just his design aesthetic in general compared to Granbird. But now what we'll do is we will take a look at Granbird, and we will do his transformation into Fire Shuttle. Before we do Granbird's transformation, there is one thing that I forgot to mention earlier, that in this form, you can actually have the shuttle pieces not stick out so much that this will actually come out. So I want to show you that real quick. So let's point this down here, and then on this side here, you can actually pull this off. Hold on. Pull off the whole thing. Just pull off this front piece here, and then you can take these and put those in there like that. So that will give it a little bit of a skinnier look. Of course, you don't have to do that, but it is a little bit better as far as going with his bulkiness there. So I just wanted to show you that before we do his transformation, so you can do that. So now we'll get to his transformation. So here we have Fire Shuttle. So this is his flight mode for Granbird. I will say that it does look pretty good. The transformation, generally speaking, is not that difficult. I would say if you do it probably about 2 or 3 times, you'll pretty much get the hang of it then. So it's not super difficult. I will say that I do think that this mode does look pretty good here. And, you know, with it not being a super hard transformation, now he does have landing gear, right? And so if you turn this over, all you would do is just flip this up here. So you've got the rollers here, and those do roll, okay? And then you've got the back of the plate for Great Fighbird, those roll as well. So you've got those there. So I would say overall, I am impressed with this transformation. I think it looks as good as this can look. I don't really have anything negative to say about it. I will say that you may get confused once you break him apart to kind of reposition some parts, put his head in there so you can kind of close it back together. That's probably the only really difficult part of his transformation. But I would say other than that, it's pretty straightforward. So it's not going to be super hard. Now, what you also can do in this mode is he does have, let's go ahead and take the android out. He's right here. All right, and then what you can do, if I can get my nail in there, matter of fact, where's my pry tool at? All right, so what you can do is you can have these up here, and then you can kind of sit him down in here like that. I don't remember him being in the show like this, where he was kind of just sticking out like that, but you can do that. You can get a close-up shot of that, hold on. So you do have the android sitting in there. It's okay. I don't mind it, but you can have two. You do have two androids, the one from Fighbird and the one from Granbird. So you can have them sitting in here together if you want, and then you can close that up if you like as well. So you can do that, but I will probably keep him in his chest part because that's pretty much where he's going to be. All right, but you do have that option if you like. So let's go ahead and put him back in here, just like that, boom. But I would say overall, it's pretty good. I still like Firejet for Fighbird better than this, but that's not because this is bad. It's just this design for me, it's just not my favorite. But I can say objectively that I still think that this is a good transformation. So we'll grab the breaster jet here, and then we're just going to bend this down, and then you're gonna swing this up. So this goes here, and then this is pretty much ready to go. And then what we'll do is we'll take the fins on this one, and we'll put those down and then have these connect. And then what we'll do is we'll have this connected here. Let's see if we can get that in there. Boom, just like that. And then let's raise that up a little bit so you can see that. And then you have the Fire Shuttle with the breaster jet on. So I will say that it does kind of leave this kibble here in the back. I guess you could swing this in. You could also have his helmet on this as well. I didn't put that on here for this, but you can just kind of take that and fold that back so that looks a little bit more cluttered. But I do like it. You know, and the thing is, even with this not being my favorite design, there is a lot to like here. I just don't think it's better than Fighbird. But like I said, that could just be my bias shining through. But I think overall, I think it does look pretty good. And if you wanted to have Fighbird and Granbird in flight mode, you know, and have him in some sort of pose, of course you would need a stand, I think, to kind of get the best out of that. And since that stand doesn't come out till next year, you have some of the generic stands that are out on the third-party market. You could probably try to get him airborne that way, and this wouldn't be so bad. But that's what you have for the Fire Shuttle. So overall, I actually am impressed with this mode. I actually think that this mode is quite good. I just don't think that it's better than Fighbird. I love that Fighbird design, but this is not bad either. There is a lot to like here. So what we're gonna do now is, now that I've showed you the transformation, we're actually going to go through Granbird's transformation into Jet Granbird. And that's just adding the breaster jet to him in his robot mode. So we'll do that next. So now we're going to transform Granbird into Jet Granbird, even though technically he's really still just called Granbird, but pretty much he will call for the breaster jet. So we're going to do that. So here we have Granbird with the breaster jet on. He would scream out Jetto Gattai. So in essence, that means jet combination Granbird, even though technically it's Jet Granbird, but nobody really called him Jet Granbird. In the show, it was mainly just Granbird. So I do like how he looks. I do like this front breastplate. I do like the Fighbird one better, but this one isn't bad. And the fact that it will move up and down. Now in the show, he kind of used this like a sword / boomerang thing, but I don't think that this will attach from this body part here. And I will say that generally speaking, let's actually move his arms down here a little bit. Generally speaking, it doesn't give him that much more girth than he already had, because this front breastplate is quite thin in comparison. He's just a thick guy just to begin with. So you do have that. He does have the missiles here on the back. This pretty much is going to be the front part of Great Fighbird when we do that transformation in the next video. But you do have that. I would say that I really like his head sculpt. I think let's zero in on that there. And then I really like this head sculpt there. I think that he still has all the articulation that the other one had. So I think that that is really, really good there. So I think they did a good job on the head sculpt. So I do like that. Now there is one glaring issue that I think that this Granbird has. And what it is that I don't think that he stands all that well. He seems to kind of want to lean one way or the other. Now I can have it to where you can kind of, you know, have him standing up straight, kind of like that. But you see, even in that pose, it doesn't look all that good to me. And he just looks like he's leaning to one side. And I'm gonna tell you why this is here in a second. And let's go ahead and go to the back here. And what you'll see, as you see, it's really apparent when you look at it from the back, is that he's leaning to the right side. And the thing is, it's because of this. Let me get to, and it's because of this back skirt here. Now, like I said, this is the front plate for Great Fighbird, but you notice that this is the back skirt for Granbird. This back skirt does not move. It stays solid. You cannot move it. I would have to unclip this, but even if I unclip this, let's see if I can get it here. Because when you transform him into Great Fighbird, you're gonna have to take that off anyway, but there's no give on this at all. And to me, that is a bad thing because you can't slide his legs back anymore. He can only really just stand straight and that's about it. And to me, he doesn't even do that well. So, and he does have, you can't extend his legs, so that helps a little bit, but I noticed that they don't lock in all that well. They kind of go in and out, especially as I start moving him. So I really don't like that. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring out a contrast here, because actually I don't even like how he's standing right now. Let's see. We'll do it like that. Okay, that looks a little bit better, but I don't know. He doesn't stand that well. You can't slope his legs back, so you can't get that classic V stance that you get with a lot of heroic poses. And I'm gonna bring out Fighbird so you can see the difference here. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna bring out Fighbird. So this is Fighbird with the flame breaster. All right, now he's slightly smaller than Granbird, but not by much, okay? But he stands a lot better, and I'm gonna show you the difference here. And the main reason why that is because if we go to the back here and we look, he has no back skirt, right? And so you can slope you see how that leg is kind of sloped back? That's what they call in kind of like the figure world or in the model world, kind of like a classic V stance, because his legs are pointed outwards like this, and his thigh, one of his legs is slightly forward compared to the other one that is slightly backwards. The fact that he doesn't have a back skirt helps him do that, helps him achieve that. But with Granbird, you cannot do that at all. And so to me, that not being able to move his back skirt, that hinders how he can stand very, very much. And I think that that's unfortunate because even though I didn't really like his base mode with the breaster jet, he actually doesn't look bad in this form. I think everything else looks good. I just wish he was slightly thinner, because if you look at the two side by side, even with the nose cone from Fighbird, you see how much thicker Granbird is? He's just so much thicker than him. Now he's got way more going on in the back. Now he's holding the front plate for Great Fighbird, so I'll kind of give him a little bit of a pass on that. But the fact that you don't have any ab articulation and you can't slope his legs back, that limits him significantly, and I do not like it. I don't like it at all. But I kind of wanted you guys to see the contrast in between the two, and the reason why I did like this Fighbird so much. I gave this Fighbird a really good score in its review, and that's the reason why, even though he doesn't have ab articulation either, but because of how the legs, you can kind of move the legs and you can kind of fake it a little bit better with this guy, is that the reason why, to me, this Granbird is a step back. I mean, if you're talking about from an articulation standpoint, it's just a step back to me. So even though he's supposed to be bigger, he's supposed to be bulkier than Fighbird, they could have done something really good with this, and I think that they didn't. So I just wanted to show you kind of like the differences between the two. So I think overall, I'm slightly disappointed in this Granbird with the breaster jet, even though I would say he does look good. He looks really good, but his articulation and the fact that you can't move his legs the way I would want to have him posed, because if you can make this guy, if you can get this guy in a really good pose, there is for your hardcore collectors, there is a reason to buy two of these. So you could have one for Great Fighbird, and then you can have the Fighbird and Granbird kind of separate in front if you want to do a whole display piece with him. You could do that, but the fact that he lacks the articulation that Fighbird had, I think is a really big step backwards. And that's too bad, because they did well with the neck, they did well with the sculpt. It looks really good considering how bulky he is, but it just doesn't do it for me. So that's what we have for the comparison between Granbird with the breaster jet and Fighbird. So now we'll get into final thoughts. So, final thoughts on this guy. You know, this one is interesting because this one had a lot of potential, but I think that it kind of did not hit the mark, especially in comparison to Fighbird. I think this Granbird does have some really good, solid things that it did. I like the face sculpt. I like the transformation into Fire Shuttle. I thought that that was done very well. His transformation is relatively simple. It's not super complicated, but the problem that this guy lacks, he lacks articulation. That is his biggest Achilles heel. His articulation, they tried to kind of go around it with the fact that this guy kind of splits open from the center. I think really hinders him. The fact that his back skirt, you cannot move his back skirt, so you're limited as far as what you can do with the upper thighs, which I think would help him out quite a bit. They kind of give you a little bit more articulation in the ankles, but to me, he still doesn't stand all that great. He is quite chunky. I mean, because in the show, he's not this chunky. But I understand with all the things that's going on with him, I understand it, but I still don't like it. I think that you could have done it a little bit sleeker than they did here. It's also missing some detail as far as his weapons and stuff like that. Some of like the green lights and like the white paint around the barrel of the Grand Cannon is something that I think that you should be able to do, because even though these things are not super expensive, so most of these are not like, you know, $250, $300, but they're still $150, $200-ish. And so to me, the thing in that price point that would compare is pretty much, especially since I just did God Genrai, is that God Bomber, he has way more detail than this guy. And I'm not saying he doesn't have any detail, but they kind of dropped the ball there. I think that those are his two main Achilles heels, is the lack of detail and the lack of articulation. Articulation hurts this guy so bad because honestly, he looks really, really good, but he doesn't have the shoulder articulation that he needs to get him to do the Grand Cannon. Once I did it in the Final Thoughts montage, that took me forever, just simply because it's hard to maneuver those shoulders when you can't move them in and out. You really can't move them in and out. You can only move them kind of like up and down. And I think that's what really hurts this guy. And that is unfortunate. The back skirt, I think, really, really hurts him as well. It's almost there. But to me, this is a big step back as far as articulation with the original Fighbird. They did the original Fighbird so great. And the thing is, I do understand that I'm a little biased because I love that design so much. But objectively speaking, there is a good figure here. This is the bare bones of a good figure. They almost got this, but it's just lacking in a couple of key areas. Mainly making him slimmer, I think, would help this guy out quite a bit and give him some more articulation, especially in the upper thighs and the shoulders, and even like having that back skirt. The fact that you can't move that back skirt to me is really, really odd, because usually you can do that. But with Goodsmile, they've had a problem with that. And even I saw a way, especially when doing the transformation, that you could give this guy some ab articulation. But just for whatever reason, I don't know if it's just the transformation itself, or maybe they haven't found a way to do that around this design, or maybe it's just the price point that they probably could, but it would cost way more. I'm not really sure, but to me that's unfortunate because there's a lot to like here. I do like the sculpt. I think that the sculpt is amazing as far as his head sculpt and all of that. I like the breastplate that he has. I mean, there's a lot to like here, and I really want to like it, but that articulation and the fact that he is really, really bulky, especially comparing him to God Genrai or God Bomber, which would actually be the exact kind of comparison I would want to make, because they both literally do the same thing. Granbird and God Bomber, they pretty much will break apart and then go around the main unit, which is Genrai or Fighbird, and then they will become, you know, he'll become Great Fighbird. So, you know, it's unfortunate, you know. So when it comes to scoring this guy, as much as I want to like him, just those key areas that I mentioned before really, really hurts him. And I can't even give him a higher score than God Bomber. I would have to give him maybe like a 7.9. I think a 7.9. He's still good, don't get me wrong. It's just that there's a couple of key things that it's missing as far as articulation. And articulation hurts this guy more than everything else. Even I can even accept the bulkiness that he has, but his lack of articulation in some key areas really, really hurts this guy. But especially the fact that he splits open from the center, that just really kills him. And I know that that's how the transformation goes in the show, so I understand why they did it that way, but it's just really unfortunate. And the thing is, 7.9 is still a good score. if, you know, this is out of 10, it's not out of 5, or, you know, so saying it's a 7.9, it's still good. It's just not on the tier of Fighbird. I think that Fighbird was just a way better figure than this, even taking the design totally out of it. Just what the Fighbird can do in comparison to this one, to me, it's just so much better. So that's unfortunate. But generally speaking, you're going to be getting this guy because you want to transform them into Great Fighbird. Yes, if he was really, really good, I can understand getting a second copy of him, but to me, he's not good enough for that. So to me, if you're buying this guy, and unfortunately, if you want to combine them into Great Fighbird, you're gonna have to get this guy. So whether you like it that much or not, and I think I am probably being a little harsh on him, but I do think that it's warranted. I really do, because his articulation just, ooh, and the thing is, they got it so good with Fighbird, and the fact that they dropped it, to me personally, with this Granbird, is disappointing to me. But of course, we are gonna go into Great Fighbird with the next video, and so we will see how both of these units come together and see what happens then. So that's what we're going to be doing in the next video. So thank you guys for watching the video. If you could like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, I would appreciate it. Send this one out to all the Brave fans, all the Fighbird fans, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.